these guys are absolutely friggin' mad. It's just never going to work, right? So we can't just listen to what customers say and do what they tell us to do. We have to do like Gretzky said. We have to skate to where the puck is going to be.
Today, we interview Mr. Gee Ranasinha, actually the CEO of an award-winning marketing agency named KEXINO. This is not your normal marketing agency, everybody. Gee is not your normal marketer. First off, he's been running his agency for 17 years. They started in 2008. He has over 400 clients in 20 different countries. They're doing things differently and they're doing things right. And what that differentiating factor is a focus on behavioral science. It's essentially, layman's term that it's probably butchers it, is that it takes psychology of your customers and around how they think and the emotions that they need to be feeling to make a stronger connection with your company and your brand. She spends a good amount of time talking about this, as well as the challenges and the lessons that he's overcome through his journey, starting as a studio photographer in Asia, actually working his way up until he was headhunted to become a CMO of a software company, to actually see this problem happening in the marketing industry when agencies were pitching to him to actually, be the marketing agencies for his company. That's what led him to start up KEXINO. It's really amazing. He has a great outlook on life. You're going to enjoy it a lot. He's full of stories, full of education. Let's jump right on into today's interview with Mr. Gee Ranasinha. Wonderful. The pleasure is all mine. So, Gee, you are the CEO of KEXINO. You guys are an award-winning marketing agency, but you're a lot more than just that in the behavioral science space. Just why don't you kick us off? Tell everybody a little bit about what you're up to.
Yeah, we've been going since 2008, so we're 17 years old. And from an agency, we we do the usual, strategy, branding, and the tactical stuff, just like pretty much any other marketing agency. Our twist, if you like, is how we incorporate behavioral science into the strategic and operational tactical executions, to working with startups and small businesses to increase their awareness, reputation, trust, and most of all sales, of course, because sales is what it's all about, right?
Definitely.
Even though we're based in Europe, 80%, 85% of our clients are in the US.
Interesting.
Don't ask me why, Wayne. I don't know. I'm very grateful and humbled by it, but apparently there's this thing called the interwebs. I don't know if you've heard of it, right? But apparently people can find you. It's like the yellow pages, and then they can find you, and they send you emails and give you telephone calls.
Isn't it a blessing, man? It's what a time to be alive. Gee, so you guys said you differentiate yourself with behavioral science and a lot of data analytics. Tell me a little bit more, right? Because I think everybody's pretty familiar with a classic marketing agency, but let's hear more about this specifically.
Okay, so there's a problem in marketing. I'm going to even call it a crisis within marketing. And any small business owner, any business owner, to be honest, doesn't have to be a small business owner, can probably identify with this. And the reason and the problem is as follows. As an industry, we are spending more and more dollars on marketing expenditure, ads, messaging, whatever. I think 2024 was predicted to break $1.6 trillion.
Marketing spend. Is that like worldwide?
Marketing spend worldwide.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Okay.
The problem with that is that the effectiveness of our marketing continues to fall. And we have to ask ourselves why that is. And I think one of the main reasons of why that is that much of what we see as marketing today, whether it's messaging, advertising, social, whatever, is too heavily focused on the rational, logical, you mentioned data earlier on, side of performance marketing, and they're missing the emotional, irrational buyer behavioral drivers that influence a purchase decision.
Nice.
Okay. So what behavioral science does is try to inject a little bit of, at the end of the day, you can call it customer psychology, right? It's a rebranding of customer psychology. It's understanding how the human mind works in context, and then shaping the content and context of our messaging to be most empathetic with the buyer at that particular point in their customer journey.
Nice.
And
Gee, if I can,
that,
sorry, interrupt you right there. Oh, so it's customer psychology. I like how you said be empathetic with the customer at their particular spot in the customer journey, right?
yeah,
What's the importance of X, right? People talk about high level, right? People talk about just niching down into a specific audience, but you're talking about being empathetic, understanding their psychology at a certain spot in their journey.
not only that, but I'm also talking about doing the opposite of narrowing down. The
Okay.
the thing is that the tools we have in marketing, all of this technology tools, is customer audience profiles and demographic profiles and remarketing tags and cookies and all of this stuff. We've got all of this stuff to hone in on what we believe to be our ideal customer profile, what marketers call their ICP, ideal customer profile. But the problem is, by zeroing in so narrowly, we're focused on what we'd call in marketing performance-based marketing. Now, I know that sounds a bit like an oxymoron. Of course, marketing needs to be performance, otherwise what's the point of doing it, right? The performance-based marketing is more of the transactional side of messaging. So it's buy one, get one free, free delivery till the end of the month, only available in blue, those sorts of things. Which is all very well and good if you know the brand, are familiar with the brand, are familiar with the problem it solves, and how it's differentiated from other players within that category. The problem is, most of the time, especially in the online world, the brands which are bombarding us with all of this messaging are totally unknown to us.
Yeah.
And since they're so narrowly targeted, I can't ask you and say, hey, Wayne, have you heard of this Okie Kokie 2000 that I'm seeing in my timeline? And you say, I don't know what you're talking about, G. Right? So we don't have any awareness, information, any trust within that brand in advance of us being what we'd call in market, which means in the position to buy. Any buyer, any customer is either out of market or in market. Okay, it's extremely rare where a product comes across our vision that we are in the right frame of mind and it is serendipitous for the time for us to buy that product right then, right now.
Yeah, very rare that happens.
Within a B2B environment, for example, there's a thing called the 95-5 rule, which stipulates that 95% of your total addressable market, people or companies that could be customers, okay? 95% of them are not in a position to buy the instant they see your messaging. Now, they may be in a position to buy tomorrow, next week, next month, 6 months' time, 6 years' time, right? But your messaging is probably going to fall on deaf ears.
Sure.
So what we need to do is to create some kind of resonance, some kind of hook so that we're remembered. And the way that the human mind works to be remembered requires information, data, pragmatism, bullet points, call it what you want. This is the product, this is what it does, this is the problem it solves, all that sort of stuff. But along with that, there needs to be an emotional component. Let me give you an example. You think about, through your life, some of the strongest memories that you have in your life, okay? 10 will get you 5, that every single one of those memories are attached to a strong emotional feeling. Maybe happiness, maybe sadness, joy, fear, guilt, whatever. It's the way the human mind works. We attach extra weight to a memory if there's an emotional component in there. Now, we still need the other half. We still need that pragmatic, logical, rational side of things. We can't just do it on the emotional side. The point is we need both. And the problem with most marketing that we see today, it's all focused around the logic and pragmatism side of things.
Interesting. Not as
And
much the
it's
emotion
lacking
side of
in the
things.
emotion side of things. But as
Yeah.
human beings, as customers, we buy here. We buy from the heart.
Sure.
Anything we buy, whether it's B2B or B2C, doesn't matter. We buy emotionally and then we post-rationalize logically. We tell ourselves a story to justify that purchase.
Beautiful.
Which is the reason why we need these two halves.
We buy emotionally, and then post-purchase you justify logically. How interesting, right? You coined this as a crisis in marketing, right? There's more marketing spend happening now than ever before, but with less results, even though that we can track it better, right? We should be able to directly track, and we should be showing better results. But the problem that you have addressed, that you are addressing, is almost this lack of emotion, right? And it sounds to me also like the correct blend of marketing emotionally and then logically also at the same time.
Any messaging needs to have an emotional component if it's going to be remembered. Okay. Otherwise, you're just putting bullet points down. Okay. The point is, any product that exists today has an emotional undertone to it. If it didn't, right? If I wanted to sell you aftershave, I could give you a white plastic bottle and write on there with a Sharpie the name of the product, and you'd buy it, right? Sure. But clearly that doesn't work, does it?
Yeah.
Right. There needs to be evoke an emotion in order to create that narrative, which we'll then tell ourselves. And zeroing in does nothing for 2 reasons. Firstly, we don't know what we're measuring, and we don't know if what we're measuring are the right things to measure. Okay? For instance, just because I see your ad 100 times doesn't mean that I've got a better propensity to buy than my next door neighbor.
Sure.
Okay? There is no correlation. If anything, the more times you see an ad, the propensity to purchase actually falls. There's plenty of anecdotal evidence to back that up.
Yeah.
But more than that, it's about creating resonance. It's about being able to recall that brand at the point that you are ready to buy.
Nice.
Which is all marketing can ever do.
Sure.
Okay, marketing doesn't persuade, it doesn't cajole, okay? It doesn't coerce, okay? All it can do is think of it as think of it as mental SEO, okay? I'm looking to buy a thing. I know that there are 3 or 4 or 5 brands that sell that thing. And I now need to decide which one of those 3 or 4 brands that come to mind I'm going to choose. All marketing can do is put your brand in amongst those 3, 4 or 5 possible choices as a consideration set for the buyer.
Sure.
That's all we can do. If your
Sure.
product sucks, your product sucks. There's nothing marketing
Yeah.
can do about it, even though product is part of marketing. But then we go on to another subject of why marketing is shut out of most product development discussions when it's
Man.
one of the 4 Ps. Okay, but
Yeah.
that's going on, and then we'll be talking for another 2 hours. So I won't open that one up. I'll leave
No,
that one alone.
let's not open that one up. I mean, gee, this is super interesting to me, right? It's very interesting how you just said actually that marketing acts like the SEO, which is search engine optimization, right? For people that aren't familiar, is how you rank on Google search, essentially. As you're saying that marketing is
Or on
tying that to
LLMs, or
memories.
on LLMs. It works on LLMs as well.
Sure, in AI, new AI limited language models, right? Um, but it's just interesting that if you don't tie this emotion to the memories of a product and of a branding, then you're going to forget and those aren't going to get recalled, right? So you want to be top of mind for your customer when they finally are ready to
When
purchase.
they're in a position to buy, yes.
Yeah,
And
when
the
they
only
have
way you
actually
can
gotten
do
that price.
that is to make them aware of you when they are not in a
Sure.
position to buy. Because if
Nice.
you wait until they are in a position to buy, they don't know who you are, they don't trust you, and they're not going to take a punt on you unless you're
Sure.
selling something commodity driven, right?
Yeah.
If it's a commodity, then you don't care, right? I don't know about you. I don't care which brand of paperclip I buy, right?
No, of
I'm
course
pretty much
not.
sure you're the same, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Commodity purchases, we don't really care. But commodity purchases, you're selling because you can't differentiate yourself across a metric that means something to the buyer. The
Mm.
only way you can differentiate yourself is on price,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. We don't want to be competing on price.
So right.
No.
So you open that Pandora's box, you ain't going to get that one shut again, right? That's
No.
not a good place to be, right?
No.
Because that's one race you do not want to win.
Yeah, of course. Gee, let's I think we'll swing back around to this, I'm sure. But let's rewind a little bit, right? You are so full of knowledge, right? It's clear to me that it's not
I'm
just in
so
the
full of
marketing
something, that's
space.
for sure.
So
Lots of
full of
people say that.
something. We won't say what else it is. Maybe at the end of the podcast, right? Stick around and we'll say what G is
Mm.
full of. But how did you let's take a couple steps back. How did you first get into marketing the behavioral science space? Like, has this always been your focus business wise?
No, um, way back when I was an advertising photographer for 5 years.
An advertising photographer.
I was an advertising photographer, studio-based advertising photographer in Asia for
No
five
way.
years,
In
working
Asia.
with large agencies for clients such as Nestle, Ford Motor Company, BAT, um, people like that.
Wow.
I did that for 5 years. Then I got involved in digital image capture for professional photographers. This is in the days when everybody was still using film, and
Sure.
we were creating 167 megabyte file images for professional use using professional equipment,
Was that
sell
big?
to
Was that
professional photographers.
big,
Right.
small amount of data? Like, when you mean you were very specific there, like how large this file size was?
Yeah, well, if you think about how big a file size is for a digital image today, you're
Sure.
talking about maybe 10 megabytes, 20 megabytes.
Uh,
I'm talking about something from more than 25 years ago where we were capturing like over 150 megabytes.
so
Now,
I guess
the
that translates
cameras,
directly to the detail, right, of these photos.
to the resolution more than the
Sure.
detail, right?
Nice.
Um, Now, you were talking about 50 grand for the camera, okay?
Wow.
But then we were talking about a long time ago, we were talking about
Sure.
professional applications.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I got involved in digital image capture at a professional level very, very early, and there wasn't actually anybody around who actually understood the photographic side of things, as well as what happened after you'd taken the photo in a digital arena. Okay, so in terms of how to prepare a file for printing, I mean photomechanical printing. Okay, conversion from RGB to CMYK, unsharp masks, the printing process, dot gain, Pantone colors, all of this sort of stuff was totally alien to photographers and certainly to photographic companies, because they only ever gave film to the client and the client
Yeah.
sorted it out, and
Um,
somebody waved the magic wand and all of a sudden it was, you know, a 48 sheet poster
uh,
on Times Square, and nobody batted an eyelid.
uh,
So I did that for a while, and then I got headhunted through a number of fortuitous meetings. I got headhunted to become the CMO for a software company in Europe.
CMO for a
Um,
software company. So you pivoted from photography directly to becoming a CMO.
well, no, I was doing photography. Then I got involved in this digital image capture stuff,
Sure.
and then after the digital image capture stuff, I got involved in what we could overarchingly describe as being print and publishing industries,
Right.
taking in digital images and optimizing them for print and publishing. At that time, we were working with clients such as Marvel Comics, Airbus, Time Inc., Nestle again, um, IKEA, big blue chip companies.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it was at that point that I got headhunted to head up this software company as a CEO. Not head up, but head up the marketing department of this software company, which is where I stayed for 7 years.
Well, gee, this is super interesting. I love to hear people's paths, the journeys of where they went and where they come from, because it helps to paint a picture of a much more in-depth picture of who you are today, right? And your understanding,
Sure.
right? Just just for fun, relate to us what you do today in relation to when you were a photographer, right, in Asia so many years ago. How did those things relate to each other today? Like, what did you learn? What did you take from then that you're using today?
Working with people.
Working with people.
My differentiator as an individual is
Mhm.
working with people. Okay. 25, 30 odd years ago, when I was an advertising photographer, okay, I'll be honest with you, Wayne. I was okay. I wasn't
Mm,
great
mm.
as a photographer. Okay, I was pretty good. I mean, the thing, you know, the images were sharp.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
they were well exposed. Okay,
Yeah. In
there was a
focus.
certain degree of, you know, creativity involved, but I
Sure.
wasn't by any stretch of the imagination the best around.
Sure.
But I got a lot of work, and the reason why I got a lot of work was the way that people felt they were being treated when they were around me. Let me give you an example. Everybody else, when they were doing a fashion shoot,
Mm,
they would start their fashion shoot at about 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, and then they would shoot on probably until lunch. If it was
mm.
a long shoot, then there'd be a break for lunch and continue until the afternoon.
Yeah.
Okay. Now the thing is, if you know anything about people, if you know anything about fashion models, they're certainly not their best at 8 o'clock in the morning, right? So if you had a fashion shoot at Gee's studio, we didn't start until 7 p.m.,
Oh, wow.
right? And then, you know, we crank up the stereo,
Yeah.
right? And it's a party until 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, whatever it takes to get the shots done,
Wow.
right? So what happens? The account executive of the ad agency says, the client's asked us to do another fashion shoot. Who are we going to use?
Yeah.
Shall we use the boring staid person, which means we have to get there, fight through traffic to get there at 8 o'clock? Or shall we go to that mad guy with the funny accent who doesn't start anything until the sun's gone down,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm doing with marketing. I'm
Wow.
working with my clients, well, all of us. There's 19 of
Sure.
us, okay?
Yeah.
19
Yeah.
of us in 9 countries. What we're doing is creating distinctiveness and differentiation on the branding of our clients so that they stand out in the minds of their audience, not just
Mm.
across product and messaging, but in terms of psychology, in terms
Yeah.
of relevance, resonance, meaning,
Sure.
all of that sort of stuff. So there is a thread of commonality that goes back to those days.
Yeah, yeah. What a great story there, right? Like when you're
I
shooting.
told you I'd give you a good story, Wayne. Didn't I say
Yeah,
that before we
you
started
you
recording?
did.
I
You
did.
did. I'm happy. I'm expecting some more, G. I think we're all hoping for more because right,
Okay.
it's this is a small thing, seemingly, right? That you just made the experience in the studio different and better, more fun, right? And that obviously brought you more business. People obviously wanted to come there instead. And
Because
now
they
that's what you're
remembered.
helping because they remembered it. And you're helping people's brands do the
Because of an
same.
emotional
Yeah.
reaction to the memory.
Where did you learn this, right? Let's back then, had you taken psychology classes?
No,
Was it just
no,
innate within you?
no. It was something I instinctively did, but didn't know there was a name for. I had a
Mm,
realization in 2002 when I was at a trade show, not a trade show, a conference, and there was a speaker at the
mm,
conference,
mm,
a guy called Tim Sanders, who at that time was at Yahoo, and now he's doing, amazing things elsewhere. He'd written a book called "Love Is the Killer App," and I was very impressed with his presentation, his talk. And of course, there were books on the table after the presentation, and so I shelled out the couple of bucks, whatever it was, to buy the book.
mm,
And the way he was talking about business was the way that I was looking at business without
mm,
actually having a formal name for it. And it was about empathy, about respect, about emotional connection, about giving without expecting to receive, all of this stuff that we know, okay, encapsulated in this book. If you ever find a copy, I mean, like I said, it's 20 odd years old now, right? But I don't
sure,
know how
sure.
it sort of stands up to today. But that was a very, very eye-opening book, because it was like, what, you mean everybody doesn't do this? I don't understand. Somebody has to actually write this down. And that was something that was eye-opening for me.
Well,
Um, but after that, I got more involved to make me a better marketer. And this goes back to the early automation days. Don't forget, in marketing, AI is probably 20 years old. We've had AI for a long time. It's
yeah,
nothing
yeah.
new.
Sure.
Okay,
I mean,
it's
there's
nothing
a
new.
different model now. Just so that people know, like when you say it's nothing new, what did it look like? What was the form of it back then?
It was certainly more manual, right? The LLMs were structured in a different way. But even 20 years ago, if you were doing a Facebook ad, you could target that ad by behavior, by geographic area, by loads of different demographics. In the old days, you could even target by perceived voting bias,
Well,
as to if somebody was particularly leaning to one particular party or another. Okay, Facebook was capturing all of this data, and you could push ads to these types of demographic audience groups. Okay,
mm, mm,
so we had all of this for a long time. So to be able to maximize the effectiveness of our advertising, we had to take a step back. And one of the golden rules of marketing is to find, the answers to most of your questions are found in the brains of your customers, right? Yet most
definitely.
marketers don't speak with customers anywhere near as much as they should do. Okay,
Sure.
speaking with customers, listening to what they say, listening to how they articulate the problem that you have solved for them, reveals an absolute goldmine of information that you can use in various areas of the business.
Oh man.
And looking further into that and actually understanding a little bit about how people buy, you get into, you know, certain types of writers, certain types of behavioral psychologists, behavioral scientists, neuroanatomists, neuroscientists. Um, you know, the two books that spring to mind. Well, the first book that springs to mind is by Daniel Kahneman, who's probably the godfather of behavioral science, I suppose. with his book Thinking Fast and Slow.
Mm.
He won a Nobel Prize for the book and the work that he did with Amos Tversky, and a number of absolutely jaw-droppingly awesome experiments that he did, which opened the industry's eyes to the importance of context and meaning when articulating the value proposition of your product or service. The other book I would mention would be a book called Nudge by a gentleman by the name of Richard Thaler, who won the Nobel Prize for Economics for that book, which is quite funny because classical economics, let's call it heterogeneous economics, like Chicago School of Economics, if you like, is probably the antithesis of what behavioral science is all about. It's the absolute polar opposite. It is the Lex Luthor to your Batman, really. Superman, sorry. It's the total opposite. The presumptions and assumptions that economics makes about markets, I think, are totally wrong and just ridiculous in how wrong they are compared to real world academic study with using human beings rather than mathematical calculations.
Yeah, let me pause there because that reminds me that what you said earlier around not nearly enough companies are speaking and listening to their customers. The answers to our problems, especially when it comes to marketing, can be found directly there. And it's something that's, I think, very obvious to you. It's pretty obvious to me because I've been in the marketing space also. But to the vast majority of people, this can be a game changer of speak to your customers, interview them, figure out what they actually want, right? What are their needs and desires? And that is a lot of times like where your marketing needs to be based, right? Or am I wrong?
Well, yes and no. The thing is, there's a lot of talk in marketing circles about a thing called customer centricity. Okay, being customer centric.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of these about us pages on websites saying, "Oh yes, everything revolves around the customer. We're very customer centric. We do what our customers ask for," and that's a very dangerous place to be for a number of reasons. Using one particular type of feedback loop mechanism to speak with customers is error prone for a number of reasons. If they're a customer, the responses they give you to certain questions are going to be skewed because they want to tell you what you want to hear.
Yeah, if they're already a customer, that's what you're saying.
If they're an existing customer.
An existing customer, yes.
They want to blow smoke up your tushy, okay? Because they think they're doing the right thing. Also, there's a post-rationalization going on. They will give you the reason they bought as a very stolid, logical, pragmatic reason, while in reality it may be because their wife liked the colour of it or their daughter liked the shape of the box. It could be 101 other things, but they'll never tell you that. The prefrontal cortex is a total BS artist and will reframe the format of the response accordingly. So we need to spread the types of communication we have with customers, and we need to overlay that with what we're seeing within the customer market space, the industry, where the competitors are going, and where we're going as a company ourselves, right? If we just, there's this old saying, and apparently it's been disproved, right? But Henry Ford is supposed to have said, "If I just listened to my customers, they would have told me they wanted a faster horse."
Sure.
Right? Now, I don't, there's loads of things that say, actually, he never said that. But it doesn't matter. It's a good quote, right?
Yeah, it's still a good quote.
But
It makes
the point
sense.
is, if we just listen to customers, right, we'd never have the iPhone.
Sure.
Right? because nobody said, "Do you know what I need?"
Yeah, yeah, that's
I,
true.
I, right, no, nobody ever said that. Okay, right. In the same time, Dyson, the vacuum cleaners, right? Now, if you're in the market for a vacuum cleaner, right, you want something that works well, right?
Mm,
That does a good job of cleaning the carpet, maybe can do hard floors as well. A couple of
yeah,
attachments to go down the back of the sofa, this, that, and the
yeah,
other.
yeah.
Spend, I don't know, a couple of $100
Mm,
maximum. It lives in the closet anyway. You don't really care, right?
mm,
What
mm.
you wouldn't do, which Dyson did, is say, you know what? We're going to create something that looks like it's from the space age, right? That lives in the Museum of Modern Art in New York City, and costs $800,
Sure,
right?
sure.
If you look at that from an economics perspective, you'll say these guys are absolutely frigging mad. It's just never going to work, right? So we can't just listen to what customers say and do what they tell us to do. We have
Uh,
to do like Gretzky said. We have to skate to where the puck is going to be.
nice. Nice. Skate to where the puck is going to be. That's right. It's just one piece of the puzzle is the listening to them. Like, I mean, such great examples here, right? Henry Ford allegedly saying, right, they would have wanted a faster horse, right? Or the
Right,
iPhone, no customer was going to be able to imagine that. Or for a vacuum, nobody was going to say, hey, I want my vacuum to look like a piece of modern art,
right.
right? Never be a skate to where the puck is going. So interesting. So, gee, so
Yeah,
you
that's
were
that's Wayne Gretzky, right? That's not me. Skate to where
yeah,
the
no, of
puck is going.
course.
That's
No,
what.
no,
Yeah,
no.
yeah.
I'm with you. Another fellow Wayne. Trust me, I'm very familiar.
Yes. Okay.
So G, in your path, right? So you became the CMO of the software company. When I'm always curious, I almost always ask this question. When did the pivot happen from employee to entrepreneur? What was that like?
Um, it was a small. The thing is, when I was director of marketing for the software company, I was inviting marketing agencies to pitch for our business. Right, that's
Sure.
one of the things that CMOs do.
Mm,
And at the time, I was amazed that none of them would take any fiduciary responsibility for the marketing plans they proposed.
mm,
Okay, so all the agencies I spoke with were more interested in the tactical stuff,
yeah,
websites, ads, events, brochures, squeeze balls, booth building, that sort of stuff, right? But
sure.
nobody was asking me about the business result on which the marketing plan needed to deliver. And I thought that was a bit crazy,
Yeah.
okay? And then it dawned on me that at the time, this is late 2007, okay? Um, it dawned on me that there were a ton of startups and small businesses out there who needed help with marketing from a business perspective.
Mm,
Designing and managing a marketing plan, generating qualified leads to ultimately produce a tangible commercial difference to their business. Okay?
yeah.
Now, all of this was happening, like I said, about the end of 2007, right? So the
Mm,
internet was beginning to affect our daily lives
mm,
meaningfully, okay? But it was the big brands who were the ones taking advantage of the potential of the internet because they had, greater technical experience, deeper pockets,
sure.
and, the
Sure.
smaller
Sure.
businesses were getting left behind, okay?
Mm,
The iPhone had just launched and affordable broadband was something that everyday people,
mm, mm,
non-techies,
mm.
civilians, as I call them, they could consider. Okay, there was an opportunity for a marketing resource aimed at small businesses and startups that could help them leverage the power of online engagement. So I looked around and tried to find a marketing agency that took that kind of approach, and I couldn't.
Mm.
So, at the beginning of 2008, me, along with two of my colleagues, started the agency, which, as you remember, if you remember what 2008 was like, was not exactly the best time to start a marketing agency.
If
It's not the
only you
best time to
knew.
do pretty much anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Not my best business decision ever, I have to say.
But then
Um,
again, maybe it was your best business decision ever, right? I mean, the best time to
Timing
start
is
is
everything
now.
in most of these things, right?
Yeah.
And you know, I want. I won't lie to you and say it was easy. It definitely wasn't.
No.
Um, but with a following wind and with some absolutely amazing clients that we had at the time who were so passionate about what we were doing, so on board with the direction that we were heading, we were able to weather the storm. And 17 years later, and 19 people now instead of 3, here we are. We're 19 people in 9 countries. 9 of us are in the US. The rest are in Europe. I have one person in South Africa, in Joburg.
Nice. Oh, great.
And I have one person in Japan, and I have 2 people in Australia.
Wow. Seeing this gap, huh? So interesting, right? While you were the CMO at the software company, everybody's pitching to you, but they aren't taking the approach of let's drive meaningful impact to the business. Right? It was much, much more, I'm guessing, just like design and creativity based. And
So all that fluffy stuff, it's just, at the end
yeah,
of the day, why are we doing this? Any business doesn't want to spend a cent on marketing. If they could just get people
ideally,
to call
sure.
them, right,
Yeah,
and close that business, they'd be happy as a pig in the brown stuff, right?
of course. Yeah.
So it's, and worse than that, I think, is that especially companies of over a certain age
Yeah.
still see marketing as a cost. They see it as a cost of doing business
Mm, mm,
rather than an intrinsic part of the value creation chain that they've built. It's as much
nice.
a part of their
Nice.
business as product is, as R&D is, as finance is, but they don't see that, right? They see it's optional, but
Mm,
it's like it's optional in the way that, okay, well, you don't have to have electricity in your plant, do you? It's optional,
sure.
right? You don't have to have a roof over your building, do you? It's optional, you know. Is it optional, really? And I think businesses over a certain age, and it's worse for the businesses which are like founder CEOs.
Mm,
The person who actually started the company and now has built it up, because those first few customer successes were achieved without marketing, because they
sure.
tapped their network, right? They
Yeah.
tapped who they knew
Yeah.
from wherever they used to be. And they got into the mindset that just word of mouth and tapping in,
The way.
friends of friends of friends further
Yeah.
on that network. So marketing has never been a systemic, endemic part of what they're doing as an organization. So
Mm,
now to bolt this thing on, they just see it as a cost rather than, part of doing business. It costs you X amount of dollars a month to have a
mm,
salesperson on board. Is that cost?
yeah. Of
How would you
course.
generate sales otherwise?
I
It's
mean,
not
so
cost,
how
is
how
it?
do you change that mindset of like not the entire market, but how do you overcome this entire mindset of like, no, marketing's a
I don't.
cost and an optional expense?
It's not my job to change people's minds.
Nice.
Right? All I can do is lay out how we work, how obviously name drop some customer success stories, and we've got loads of those sorts of
Sure. Sure.
testimonials and all that sort of stuff. But you know, you can't change people's minds. Okay, they have to change their own mind, right?
Mm,
It's like if you know someone in substance abuse, drug abuse, alcoholism, you can tell them until you're blue in the face that they're killing themselves, but until they say, okay, I need to change the way I'm doing stuff, right? This is not
yeah.
going to work
Yeah.
anymore. Until that happens, you're just banging your head against a brick wall. There is no point, because it's never going to stick. And if
Mm,
it doesn't
mm,
stick at the top level of an organization, you're doomed from the start, because we lead by example. So everybody else is going to look at the person at the top of the tree and say, well, he or she's not doing what this guy's telling me, so why should I? It won't stick. So you're just wasting everybody's time.
yeah. Yeah. But let me ask you this though, right? Because where's the line of like where education becomes important? Because you're right that we can't change people's minds, but most education is the work in progress of changing their minds, right? Because they first become curious, and now we are
Yes,
there to help that
yes,
process.
yes. And the education has to be structured in a certain way, and it has to be incomplete,
Mm,
so that the people that we're targeting have to make an effort to join the dots.
Interesting.
Because by doing that, it becomes their idea.
Mhm.
And then you've got them. You see what I mean?
I see exactly what you mean. It's interesting, right? Leave the education, you said incomplete. I was like, where is he going
Yes.
with this? But it's so that they must keep digging deeper, connect the dots themselves, and thus formulate the entire idea. And now they believe in it. It's almost like that
Because
term
they
like
think,
inception, huh?
yeah, because it's become their idea now. They've taken ownership of
Well,
that.
yeah,
You haven't told them it. They've
no,
discovered it themselves.
they've
It's a
discovered it
totally different
themselves.
neurochemical transmitter cocktail that's going on in the cerebral cortex.
That's that's awesome. That'd be great. That's great. Gee, so
Clever
tell me a
stuff,
little bit,
isn't
like, it's super clever, honestly. That is great.
it?
Great approach to education, honestly. So talk to me a little bit about the future. I mean, you guys have been around for 17 years, right? You're
Yeah.
crushing in the marketing space. Tell me about what's the future look like for not just KEXINO, but for G.
KEXINO more of the same.
Mm,
We I don't want us to grow anymore. I didn't want us to grow as big as we are, to be honest. I thought we'd always
really?
stay very small and niche and boutiquey. But as we've grown, and we at the beginning we used to outsource a lot of our customer work, but we were just never happy with the QA process.
Mm,
So we've brought in people who have those core competencies in house. As we've grown, that's not to say that we're not learning internally. And there's various, obviously AI, as you can imagine, AI based workflows that we're testing and working on at the moment. There's some very, very clever stuff on the agentic AI side of things. So getting AI agents, rather than prompting, you
mm,
actually come up with the end result you want, and you leave it to the LLMs to assign the most appropriate AI agent to do the
nice.
work. And you have it on a workflow platform which handles the prompting at a micro level. So we're doing stuff like that. We're not going to grow any bigger than we are.
Mm,
We're going to focus very much on the behavioral science stuff because it is a differentiator. Because I think at the moment we're still in the honeymoon period with AI, and everybody's jumping up and down about pictures of you know
Eating and
penguins or
everything.
cats or this, that, and the other.
Yeah,
It's like, yeah, great, it looks wonderful, but tell me, how are you going to make some frigging money at it, right?
sure.
That's where the whole thing falls down, as our cards. So actually creating some tangible, beneficial commercial value for
Mm,
our clients by you and using AI for the right things, right? We've got this idea of trying to fit a round AI into a square hole, trying to make it do stuff that it's actually not very good at doing. Okay, it's really good for a ton of stuff, and it's really crap at a load of other stuff. And yet we're saying, well, yeah, but why can't we? Let's focus on the good stuff. And also we're coming at it from a position of saying, okay, AI helps us do stuff faster and
mm,
cheaper, instead of saying, well, how about using it to make us better? We're not talking about better. We're talking about commoditizing the whole thing. So what's going to happen, because the objects of our marketing efforts are human beings, we're going to get to the point where all of this generic vanilla marketing messaging being kicked out by AI algorithms is just going to continue to fall in effectiveness. And the only people who are going to stand out, be distinctive, are the people who actually understand how we work, right? It's not about,
yeah,
you know, how does AI work? How does the LinkedIn algorithm work? How does TikTok work? No, it's how does the human mind work? How
yeah.
do our customers work? How can we better frame our communication? And I think that coming at it from that strategic perspective, we're that's our path moving forward. For me, G, the next chapter for me is I'm actually started beginning of the year to see whether I can actually try to make it on the circuit of public speaking.
Nice.
So to give keynote speeches um, to particular industry groups
Mm.
about this sort of thing, because I think this sort of thing translates into pretty much any industry, any business unit, and even outside of business.
Sure.
Um, and it works for me within certain industries where
Mm.
people approach me and say, do you fancy giving a speech in this place and in this part of the year? So I want to see whether that can be scaled and expanded outside of the little bubble that I live in. And if
Nice.
not, then it's like, okay, so it's a wake up call. It's like, okay, I'm not as good as I think I am. I go back to being humble and get on with the day job.
Hey, but you don't know
But then I
until
also
you
teach, and I
try.
still teach.
Yeah.
We
Great.
didn't even mention that. I teach. I've been teaching for 10 years now. I teach,
Oh,
would you
wow.
believe, marketing and behavioral economics
I
to
would never
final year
guess.
MBAs at two business schools. Yeah.
Oh, great. Oh man, so
My
you're already helping a lot of people. You're already lecturing, yeah. So I mean, it seems like it's a
Yeah.
great next step is doing public speaking circuit.
Well, teaching is kind of public speaking, right?
Exactly.
It's just that the audience think you suck, which you know I probably do. No, I mean they're finally your MBAs, so they're all in their mid to late 20s, so it's not that bad.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just to sort of see whether I can make that next step, or if not, go back to something warm and comforting and familiar.
Yeah, yeah, but we have to first work on getting uncomfortable, right? To be able to make change happen, move
That's
forward.
where the magic happens.
And then if it doesn't work out, well, guess what? You can always take a step back to the comfortable, to the
It's not
familiar.
only that. I think over my life, I think pushing yourself out into those discomfort areas
Mm.
tends to open doors that you would have never had opened otherwise, and it takes you down different paths, right? And but they only happen on the periphery, right? Nothing happens in the middle of the bell curve, right? We have to be right up the other one end or right up the other end.
Nothing great happens in the middle.
Yeah,
It really doesn't. That is normal and boring. Gee, like Eve, it's been absolutely a pleasure. As we wrap up here, I always like to talk a little bit about legacy because I find that the definition varies a lot from person to person. And so I'm curious for you, what does legacy mean, and like what is the meaningful legacy that you're working to leave on this world?
okay. Well, I don't have as big an ego as maybe I hopefully didn't come across on this conversation, to think of a legacy as anything meaningful. I'm not interested in legacy in that respect. Um, I'm interested in hopefully my habits and outlook rubs off on people that I meet within work or outside of work, that influences their decisions and their lives in some way. And that's it, really. No more than that.
Your habits, your outlook, rubbing off on people and influencing them in a positive way.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, I know it sounds probably very, very West Coast tie dye, hippy dippy, believe in the power of the crystal sort of stuff, right? But really, that's all. That's all it's about, I think.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And you'd be surprised, right? If you were to go back and listen to a handful of that podcast episodes, right? I'm so pleased
Yeah.
to say that a huge majority of people give a similar answer to that,
Oh,
right?
okay. Well,
Like,
so to be unoriginal then.
no, no, it's actually great, right? It's showing everybody, well, point of the show almost is to show everybody that, we can be in business and like work to make a huge impact, right, financially in our lives and others' lives, right, and make a big impact that way. But like true legacy boils down to our interactions with each other, right?
Yeah.
Actually, are our habits and the way that we treat people, how are they affecting each other? And it's always beautiful to hear that from, somebody like yourself running a pretty much global company. And so, gee, I appreciate it. If people want to learn more from you, right, where's the best place for them to go?
Best place to find me, to be honest, Wayne, is on LinkedIn. Would you believe that there's only one Gee Ranasinha to be found on LinkedIn? Can you
No.
imagine? Oh, no way. Yes, you find me on LinkedIn. Otherwise, you can find me obviously at KEXINO, which is KEXINO.com, which is the agency. And yeah, if you like a conversation, we're going to have a conversation. The conversation's free. And if it makes sense, if I can help you in any way, then I absolutely will.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for tuning in, everybody. I greatly appreciate you for being here as always. Please help us share the episode, share it with a friend, a family member, a business colleague, right? Let's share this mindset of marketing differently, of telling stories, of being emotional. Such great insights. What are some of the highlights that I talk about? Man, customer psychology, huge, right? Creating resonance to be remembered. Being emotional is so important, right? Any messaging has to have an emotional component to it that will be remembered. Talks about the importance of working well with people, right? That's what stood him apart when he was a photographer, and that's what stands him apart today, right? Is creating a different experience. How can you all differentiate yourself? Near the end of the interview there, actually, he mentioned how you need to be on either end of the spectrum of like go fully in on something, right? Either direction. Don't just be this half in, half out in the middle. That's where you totally get lost. And so, how can you stand apart? How can you be different, right? We talked about speaking and listening to your customers while at the same time, right? The customer is not necessarily always right. They don't necessarily know always what they want or need because they don't have the insights that we do into our own industries. And yeah, how interesting that he's actually figuring out how to use AI to make us all better. Because it's the truth that soon enough, we're going to all just be on this sort of level playing field of AI. That's all being used to it. So, how can we stand apart? How can we be different, right? Go above and beyond. And focusing in on emotion is a great piece of that puzzle. Everybody, thanks for being here today. I want to invite you to come join us over at journeytolegacy.org. We are helping individuals to leave a meaningful legacy on this world. And a big part of that is about how we communicate, how we tell stories, and emotionally connect with our customers, with our audiences, with our friends, our family members, everyone we come in contact with. Come check us out over at journeytolegacy.org. Until next time, thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Wayne Veldsman, and I will see you soon.